Well, hello. I'm Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster guy, coming to you with another interesting episode of what's going on in the great grand world of VidBlaster. I am really excited about today's show. Today we're going to sort of be reviewing, going back in time a little bit, but reviewing VidBlaster version 3, which really is groundbreaking stuff. And, you know, it kind of comes a little bit at a time to you, so it's, until I sat down and started going through the notes today, I didn't realize really all the great stuff that's going on in version 3. So before I do that, though, I do want to get a shout out to all the guys in the chat room. Yay, guys in the chat room. And thanks for tuning in live and putting up with me today. And also invite you, if you're watching on YouTube, to join us on a Wednesday afternoon. It's about 3 o'clock. What is it? 3 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock London. But it sort of depends on when the time change is between British summertime and daylight savings time in the U.S. And hold on just a second. Let me fix this. There we go. And so the premise of this show is that one guy with one PC, everybody's saying it in the background, and the right software, can do one awesome broadcast. And we're hoping today that you agree with it. The software, of course, is VidBlaster. VidBlaster runs only on Windows. So if you've got a Mac, you'll have to get one of those little translators that translates Mac world into Windows world. And VidBlaster allows you to stream, record, add overlays, play videos, do chroma key, like I've got behind me right now, and all sorts of other cool stuff. I had a conversation. What prompted the thoughts for this show is I had a conversation with a client who purchased a VidBlaster license from me probably, 2 years ago, maybe 2.5. And he was on VidBlaster version 1.36, which was a great VidBlaster version. It really was, but it was version 1. And he had put it on the shelf for a little while and was coming back to it. Oops, excuse me. Was coming back to it to restart a show that he'd been doing. And he'd forgotten how to do this and forgotten how to do that. So he shot me he actually texted me. He had my cell phone number, and he texted me. He said, "Tom, how do I do this?" So we ended up chatting a few times. And what had happened was that Skype, he was using Skype because it was an interview show, and it was sports broadcasting. And so he had all these, big name hockey players mostly, but basketball players and other guys that he knew that he would call, and he would ask them a bunch of questions and then would record it, and was using Skype to do that. And so he was, of course, in the last 2 years, Skype has updated itself a bunch of times, and things that used to work with VidBlaster and with Wirecast and with other software, when Skype updated, didn't work anymore. And one of those was the VidBlaster streamers VVD that no longer works as a Skype input. And so he was sort of kind of orphaned by that, as were a lot of people. I think Wirecast had some of the same issues. Somebody says in the chat room, they don't want to distract me from the show. Too late. Sorry about that. Looks like a technical issue that I have to address, but I'm going to have to ignore it for the second. The issue was that basically his VidBlaster was grossly outdated. It was version 1. We're up to version 3. And as I was trying to explain to him some of the benefits of version 3, and there's no sense in upgrading to version 2 because it's still not really obsolete technology, but it's not as good as it could be. So he said, okay, well, let's upgrade to version 3. And so we processed the upgrade. And so I thought, well, maybe I need to sit down and figure out what's going on in VidBlaster 3 since it started. And I didn't realize it, but it was way back in April, not April of this year, but April of 2013, when the very first VidBlaster 3 beta came out. So it's been, let's see, April, May, June, July, August. So it's been a year and 4 months since VidBlaster version 3 has come out, and there have been some dynamic changes to the software. Some of which, for those of you old VidBlaster guys that have been around for a while, you're just taking for granted. But for others of us, they are significant changes. Versions 3.01 through 3.05, I think, must have been private betas or internal betas, because version 3.06 was the first released beta. And with that came the news that VidBlaster was really getting serious about optimizing for HD, and had rewritten some of its basic engine, and in particular the player module and the recorder module, and that the recorder module now was going to record to an industry standard MPEG-2 format, that the camera module 2 had been discontinued in favor of camera module 3, which is a little lighter on resources, and that the program and preview modules had been eliminated, and in their place a new module, the monitor module, has the ability to either be a program module or a preview module, or you can have more than one, or the monitor can monitor anything you want. It can monitor a camera or an effect module or whatever. And probably the biggest news is that VidBlaster was getting away from Direct Show. Direct Show and QuickTime were no longer part of what was needed to operate VidBlaster. As kind of a minor note, there was a sort of a quasi HD resolution that was inserted as one of the drop downs that was a 540p. So it wasn't really 480, so it wasn't standard definition, but it wasn't 720 for high definition. It was somewhere in that gray area, that land between standard definition and high definition, that this new resolution was put in. And essentially it's a quarter of 1080. And so it, in some cases, depending on how you were streaming, could be really light on resources, because the camera could cut the resolution in half instead of having to, I guess, re-encode it or whatever it does to get it from 720 down to 480, which is not an even multiple. So that was version 3, and that was really some groundbreaking stuff. There was some bug fixes in 307, and then in 308, one of the things that I requested was the ability to have lockable modules came out. And so if you were playing with something and you didn't want to screw it up, you could lock your modules and they would stay in place. And then the addition of some more pins for the API, which then made a way for version 3.09, which was again groundbreaking for VidBlaster, because that's when macros came in. And if you've watched some of the other shows, you've heard me talk about macros. Alan Bunt, the macro king, has been on and talked about the macros that he does there at Good Shepherd Church. And macros were a big deal and continue to be a big deal. It's a great way to operate VidBlaster, whether it's on the same PC or remotely. And then for those folks like me that like the instant replay, especially the slow-mo instant replay, the third part of the instant replay system was introduced, which was the replay playlist, which allowed you to take the clips that you had been saving and put them into a playlist and play them later. Not a big deal, but for some people it was. VidBlaster now had the ability to do OEM branding, so you could insert your own splash screen in VidBlaster. Version 10, and version 9 ended up being a proper release version. So if you bought VidBlaster at that point, you got version 3.09. Version 10 was a private beta. 11 had some bug fixes, and then version 3.12 was again a big deal for VidBlaster, because it meant that VidBlaster was now Windows 8 compatible. And that was done in kind of a backwards fashion, but it was very effective. I mean, it doesn't matter how you do it if it works, right? Well, they eliminated the audio module, and so there was no more audio module. And the audio was now, a part of whatever the modules were that needed audio. If you had a player, it had audio. If you had a recorder, it now requested information for audio. Same thing for the streamer. So the audio was now part of other modules, wasn't necessarily needed for itself. My friend that I was speaking with earlier in the week did notice, as he upgraded to version 3 from version 1, that the player no longer had volume control in it. I thought that was an interesting observation. I'd noticed that too, but it didn't really affect me because I ran the audio from my players through my mixer here, and so I can control the level of the audio in the players through the mixer and not through the player, which was kind of cumbersome. But if you don't have a player, if you don't have a mixer, if your mic plugs directly into your PC, there you go. So anyway, it was an interesting observation on his part. The 3.12, the introduction for Windows 8 and more API stuff. 3.13, the help was updated. 3.14 was a release candidate, but ended up fixing some bugs, as did 3.15. And 3.16 and 3.17 ended up being an official release. 3.18 had some, kind of technical stuff that, frankly, I don't always understand, but it basically was performance-based. And so VidBlaster was able to get a little bit more horsepower under the hood, I guess. 3.19 was probably a watershed point for me personally in the version 3s, because up to 3.19 I had not been recommending that folks upgrade to version 3 because there was no playout module. What was it? Playlist module. The playlist module had been eliminated, but nothing had been put back in its place. And so for folks that were upgrading, I didn't want them to upgrade with the assumption that they were going to have the playlist ability. So 3.19 is when the Playout Controller came in, which has got all sorts of promise to it. Right now it's still kind of, as of 3.19, and now it's still in I'd say long-term development, but it's there and it's usable and it does everything that the what do you call it? The playlist module used to do. This is the Playout Controller. So that was 3.19. Major change for me personally, because I could now, with whole heart, recommend to folks that they make the upgrade. And by the way, I'm not licensed. I am licensed, but it doesn't apply in this case. I'm an authorized VidBlaster reseller, so if you need an upgrade, I can help you with it. Tom at thatvidblasterguy.com. Versions 3.20 and 3.21 added multi-channel audio support. Not a mixer now. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but multi-channel audio support for folks that were using what used to be called the RTMP. I think input is now called the IP decoder, and so that's built in there. And so that was followed by 3.22, where the at one point, and I don't remember exactly where it was, the player module got a sort of a twin module called the audio player. And so the player module was sort of for video now, and the audio player was for audio. I think it did MP3s. And that was just in some of the higher level versions. But as of 3.22, the audio module now became available for all the editions. 3.23 and 3.24 were private betas, and 3.25 getting real close to the. You remember 3.25 was our contest as to when the next beta would come out that would have the new streamer in it. 3.25, the new streamer came out, and 3.26 very recently, a special edition of VidBlaster to be used with specific CDNs came out called the VidBlaster SE for special edition. And as of then, SundayStreams.org was, or SundayStreams.com, I think, was the only one that was using that version. And that basically was a free version of VidBlaster, essentially the home edition. that you could, if you signed up with Sunday Streams, you'd get that for free, and so you could begin to use VidBlaster and then upgrade, or rather purchase a licensed version of VidBlaster at a later date if you decided you wanted to. So the big changes, I think, for version 3 were that VidBlaster was really becoming more streamlined, in some ways more powerful internally, that some of the old code that kind of got VidBlaster started was being rewritten based on new technology, new information, and new needs. And so that was a long-term effort behind the scenes in VidBlaster that in some ways doesn't always feel like it produces a lot of fruit, but I think it did in the long run, that it's made VidBlaster more durable and probably more easily adaptable in the future, because then we had macros come out, we had Windows 8 compatibility come out, we had the Playout module come out, and the new streamer. And those have been some big deals for VidBlaster along the way. Probably the biggest really was macros. I think people that have now, macros is available in the studio version and up. So if you've got home or pro, you don't have the ability to use macros, and that I think limits its appeal. Obviously, if you don't have it, you don't care about it. But for those folks that are doing higher level broadcasting, having macros can just make your life so much easier, so much easier. And then the new streamer, which of course is still under evaluation, and it's a beta. It's not a released version item. In fact, there's a new feature in VidBlaster now that basically, to get access to these beta functions, you have to know a certain keystroke in order to, and I'll tell you what it is. You have to know a certain keystroke in order to make those macro functions available, and that is to hold down the control key and the shift key and then press the module button up top and then swing down to add, and then any new beta features will be available. So that's control shift and modules. I think if you're on the bubble, I mean, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, and you're on the bubble as to should I upgrade, I'd say now's a good time. Now is a good time. VidBlaster is very stable in version 3. The new streamer, the old streamer is still there, so if the old streamer was working for you, you can continue to use it. The new streamer is based on the FFmpeg streaming engine, encoding engine, which has all sorts of cool features in it. It has the AAC audio codec at no charge. It has the X.264 implementation of the H.264 encoding protocols, which, as VidBlaster gets it dialed in, I think will be more and more efficient in terms of CPU usage. Right now we're broadcasting 864 by 480, 30 frames a second, streaming at 1500 kbps video, 96 kbps audio, and recording, and we're running about between 50 and 58%. There was 60 in CPU usage, and prior to the new streamer, that would have been 10% more on the average. Flash Media Live Encoder, FMLE, was not known for its lightweight CPU use. Although it's a heavy-duty program, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. It was orphaned by Adobe several years ago. Won't be upgraded. Won't have any bug fixes. Won't be in any more development. It's just sitting out there. And FFmpeg, I think, is going to be a bit more of the future. Wirecast has been incorporating parts of FFmpeg for years. vMix, just in its version 14 beta release, has implemented FFmpeg for the first time, probably because VidBlaster has. And so we'll see that the new encoding processes where we can get compression that causes less CPU use in order to get a better quality, or less to get the same quality, or the same amount of CPU use to get a better quality. I think that's going to be kind of the wave of the future as we do it. So if you're considering an upgrade to VidBlaster version 3, the way it works financially is whatever edition you've got now, let's just say, for example, you've got the Pro Edition, which retails for $495. The upgrade cost is 50% of that, essentially. So if you've got version 1, you're ready to upgrade to version 3, it's 50%. Same for version 2 to version 3, 50%. If you've got the higher versions that are more expensive, obviously it's going to cost you more money. If you've got the lower edition, it'll cost less. But one thought, and it just kind of goes on, I guess, out of the category of I've gone from preaching to meddling, as they like to say down here in the South. But one thought is, if you're going to upgrade your version, that is from 1 or 2 to 3, why not consider throwing a few more bucks with it and upgrading your edition at the same time? Because let's say you're a pro user and you want to upgrade. If you upgrade to Studio from $495 to $995, a $500 difference, you get a free version upgrade with that. If you upgrade the version, it's essentially about $250. So it's about half the cost, but for twice the money, you can upgrade the version and the edition. You go from 15 modules to 25 modules, and you get the macros to boot. So if you're a pro user, boy, this could be a great opportunity. And my good friend John from Gainesville used his winnings from the VidBlaster contest last month to make the upgrade. So congratulations, John. I don't see John. Yeah, John's in the chat room today. Hat tip to John. Shout out to John. Go Gators. Oh, did I really say that? Can't believe it. Anyway. So that's version 3 VidBlaster. Really, really cool. I think really worth a good long look. And you know, it's interesting. Version 1 ended at 1.36. Version 2 ended at 2.33. Right now we're at version 3.26. So we're getting towards the end. If we look back historically, we're getting towards the end of the cycle for version 3. If you're worried that version 4 is going to come out and you will just have upgraded to version 3 and you're going to be screwed, don't worry. Traditionally, VidBlaster is given a year's grace period. So if you have upgraded to version 3 within the last year of version 4 coming out, you get upgrade for free. So you've got protection for up to a year. I got distracted by John from Gainesville in the chat room talking about his Florida Gators football team great victory this past weekend. They got rained out. Sorry, John. Oh, sometimes I just kill myself. Oh, goodness. Oh. I'm not a Gator fan. I'm a Seminole. We knock heads. Anyway, if you've got questions about version 3, whether you should upgrade or how you should upgrade, or what do you think is best, if you want my opinion, or if you have some specifics, you know, does version 3 still have this, or can I still do this with the version 3, or I've had this problem in the past, will version 3 fix it? I'd be happy to address those questions. Drop me a note. It's tom@thatvidblasterguy.com. So it's like Tom at thatvidblasterguy, and then put a .com at the end of it. So that will be the easy way to get that. If you're watching live, coming up in a few minutes, we've got another segment and called Streaming Idiots. It's our new show. I'd say new. We've been doing it for several months. So we hope you'll hang around for that. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe on YouTube. I've noticed a big jump in subscribers lately, and I think I hope that's because of the quality of the shows, but you know, probably not. It's probably people subscribing thinking they're subscribing to something else. Anyway, do subscribe, and you'll get a notice of when we release a new show. That VidBlaster Guy is released on YouTube on Wednesdays, and then Streaming Idiots is released on YouTube on Fridays, even though they're both live to tape on Wednesday. So we'd love to have you. And also, you may want to make note of our new website, Eastern Shore Broadcasting. We're gradually bringing that online, and we have our VidBlaster store there, and we have our vMix store there, and we have our streaming accessories store there. So if you're looking for an accessory, you may want to check there, and we'll be adding to that as time goes on. So anyway, it's been a delight being with you today. If I can help you, let me know. Otherwise, golly gee, what shall I say? Well, let's see if we can't make some good use of an outro from my good friend Martin Kay. Thank you, Martin. And we'll see you next week.